Well, Ayla Nereo, thank you so much for hopping on the show, taking a little bit of time. I appreciate it. And where is this spot that you're at with the bad internet?
It's out in the country in the foothills of the Sierra Nevada mountains.
Oh, so wait, that's like east, like in Grass Valley area?
Exactly. Yeah, that's the
Oh, that's
zone.
nice.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's hot, but it's really nice.
Yeah. And do you have any fire concerns out there where you are?
Yeah, pretty much all summer.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't have an active fire. We've had a few spot fires, but I'm just super grateful at the response time of our fire systems here, and um, we have a um, we have an air base pretty close too. There is a huge fire. The Dixie Fire is pretty just a bit north of us, an hour and a half.
Yeah.
So,
So is that where you grew up or is that just where you've relocated to?
um, I grew up in Sonoma County, and I have been here. David and I have been here about 7 or 8 years. Um, but yeah, I grew up in Sonoma County, so not too far away. Also
And
country.
is David is known as Polish ambassador?
hmm
Okay.
hmm
I'm piecing it all together.
Yeah,
And Wildlight, that project, is that also with him or is that somebody else?
that's us. Yeah, that's our
That's you too.
joint project.
Okay. So you're essentially a solo artist and then you have a joint project, but I know you guys do a lot of crossover beyond that, I've seen.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We've mostly we're starting to get back into the wildlight stuff. For the last couple of years, we've been more focused on our solo projects,
Yeah.
but there's some new, fun, weird things being made.
Yeah. So tell me, I'm just curious about like from a production point of view, how deep are you into like getting your hands into production, engineering, and what are the things you enjoy or don't enjoy?
Yeah, it's actually changing right now because for a long time, I mean, I came from a folk background for just musically, and so for a long time my production was simple, and it's gotten more and more involved over the years, and of course doing wildlight is like this whole realm that I just love. I'm a dancer, and so I just love making dance music. Um, but the production side has more been other people. Recent albums, I've worked with a producer. I love
Okay.
producing and co-producing songs. But again, the hands-on production stuff is usually the other person. I'll like have a bajillion ideas, but they're kind of making it happen. Um, so only just recently, I'm like really diving into actually a whole new live setup that involves Ableton, which is then making me just get to know Ableton and actually record what I'm doing
Yeah.
differently. So I'm getting into it more, and it's really really fun.
Yeah, because like doing things live and doing it in the studio, it is pretty different, I guess,
Yeah,
for most folks. And I would imagine that could be a little frustrating when, like, I've always had to engineer and do my own stuff because there was nobody else. Like,
yeah,
I just had to learn it over the years, and I really enjoy it. But it also can sometimes be, especially early on, you're just like, I don't know how to get this sound I want. I don't know how this stuff works. And you learn
totally.
as you go. And
It's yeah, it's definitely something I'm inquiring into right now. I'm just gonna see it where it leads, but I love when I'm producing a song or co-producing a song with someone. I love the string swells. I love the big bass. I just have so many ideas for kind of I love really epic kind of sounds. And then when I go to play it live, it either requires that I have a huge band or some band and a backing track. Um, and so I'm playing with potentially the idea of like just produce it however the hell I want to produce it and then perform it differently, just
yeah.
in a live way. And then the third thing that I'm really getting into now is actually having totally different versions of the song that are more for dancing too. So getting into more
Hmm.
of that side of production. Um, I enjoy. I don't know. It's fun to have multiple versions of a song. It keeps it kind of fresh for
Totally,
me
yeah. And
too.
have you
So
ever thought about like if you're getting into Ableton, have you ever thought about doing a DJ set of your album where you're singing and doing all the stuff over it, but it's more of like a through, keeps it going for like an hour.
Yeah, I've thought of that. I kind of I think because I'm like more based in the live like acoustic realm as my roots, I have sometimes a hard time just like singing over my own tracks
Yeah.
because there's some part of me that feels like,
Believe me, I get it. But, I'm
but
thinking
I
from
think
a dance
I
perspective.
totally, and I think of it differently for producers. I'm like, well, that makes sense, but for some reason for me it doesn't for myself. So there's no like any feelings about other people doing it. It's more just like I think it's just something I need to get comfortable with because I know it would be fun. And it's what I do with Wildlight. Like it's essentially what we're doing on stage. So yeah, but I love looping. I do a lot of live looping, and so that's the next layer that's happening now is doing a lot more intricate live looping and actually
Mhm.
kind of remixing my own songs in the
Mhm.
moment.
Totally.
So
What
yeah,
was your first looper?
my
I
first
know what mine
looper.
was. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, okay. I'll go first, and then you say
You go
yours.
first. Yeah.
Jam Man by Digitech.
Jam Man. Mine was the Head Rush, the Akai.
Oh, oh,
I think I
cool.
saw Katie Tunstall using it, and I was like, "Okay,
That's
I'll try
cool.
that one." It was
It's the
just
foot
a
one.
single loop. Yeah. I mean, you could use
Cool.
your hand or your foot, but it
Yeah,
was just one loop. I'm not even sure if it had undo. Maybe it does. Might
like
have
you had
been
to hold it
mono.
down. That's what mine did. It was one loop,
Maybe.
but you had to hold it down to undo the last thing. But there was no
Yeah.
like timing to it.
Nope. And then I got into like trying to remember the path I took to where I tried the Boss stuff, never worked for me. I didn't like the sound or
Uh
it
huh.
didn't like how I don't know, it didn't work for me.
Yeah.
And I think
Did
I
you do the
tried some
electro
others.
harmonics? I did that one for a
Yeah,
second.
that one that's like got 4. I
Yeah.
messed with that a bit. But eventually I found the boomerang loopers and that just worked for me because they're stereo and I think it's like 24-bit coming through it. It
Oh,
just
cool.
sounded good and it just worked for me. And
Cool.
I still use those, but
That's
I was
awesome.
eventually able to input in MIDI into it, like so it can sync to like
Yeah,
Ableton or something if I want it to. But I
totally.
can't save anything in it, but that's okay. It's just like totally just live.
That's awesome. Yeah, the after I started using Voice Live Touch because it could sync, but it wasn't super reliable, and so then I started using the Boss.
The black one, that's like 4 loops or
Yeah.
5 loops. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. What? Now I'm blanking on the number.
It's a newer, yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Four,
Yeah.
550 or something. I don't remember. So I've been using that one for a really long time, and I'm just transitioning to a new one. Um, oh my gosh, I'm blanking. My a friend actually who's a musician, Vince Simo, he's made this looper that's fully integrated with Ableton, and he's actually programming like whole new plugins for looping within Ableton. It's pretty epic. So
It's not the data looper,
it
or
is
is
the
it?
data
Oh, yeah,
looper.
I have one over there. I
Oh
just
my
haven't
gosh.
used it much. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. It's definitely like I'm in the learning curve right now, but
Yeah.
it's definitely opening up whole worlds. So yeah,
Well,
geek
I
out on
imagine
loopers.
it's cool too, because I would imagine you could sort of ultimately have it do what you want it to do, and that's sort of been something I've been interested in the
Totally.
future.
Yeah,
Or you could have like multiple on stage doing this. Usually have different like spots if you want to bounce over
totally.
here, and it's triggering the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah, and
Um,
I'm using it with an Akai controller. So it's pretty like I said, I'm still in the learning phase, but it's pretty fun. Got a
yeah, it'd
lot
be
of
badass. I
flexibility.
mean, yeah, and you can also what's cool too is through that Ableton. I know we're just getting in the weeds here, by the way. I didn't even
This is
start
why we're
big
just
and work in,
tech
but
geek out moment.
whatever. Um, what's cool is you can send whatever you want of all your looping stuff into your own in-ears mix and
Yeah,
it's like always the same, like
yeah,
always, and
yeah,
you can totally design how you want that to sound.
yeah,
And that's really handy, I
yeah,
find, because then you're
yeah,
just like you don't have to rely on wherever you are and
totally.
all that stuff.
Yeah, and it's nice to be. I feel like every bit that I can make my setup tighter so that it's one less thing
Yeah,
to think
dude.
about and worry about on stage is just a really good move because There's already a
Yeah.
lot to think about when you're getting ready for set.
I, we had a conversation on this show with artist Caitlin Aurelia Smith, who does some really amazing analog synthesis. And I was
Oh,
like, how
cool.
do you tour? What do you do? And she's like, I've developed my entire system. I can get into like a backpack. And I was like, I'm so jealous. That is
Yeah,
sounds
right.
so amazing. She's like, just pull it out, boop, boop. But really, you get into the whole duplicate computer setups that some
Hmm.
people have. I don't have that.
Yeah.
I would like to, but I saw this band, and they were playing before me or after me, and they had the whole thing. They're from the UK, and they had this whole rack unit duplicate, and you had to see the switch in front of them where he could just hit the switch and it'd switch systems. So it's
Wow.
theoretically seamless. But they start playing, and the whole system just goes dead. And they're
Yeah,
like, "Oh, he's hitting the switch.
that's a great
Nothing's happening."
fear.
Yeah, and they look over on the wall, and basically the power cable will come out of the wall. It's like the basics. It's like
Yeah,
or
that
some power
happens.
strip, piece of shit power strip failed. And it's
Yeah,
like you can have a $10,000 setup and it's like, well, it still plugs into the wall, you know.
totally. Which is why I think I'll always bring a guitar with me, because then maybe if all else fails,
Smart
just
lady.
sing into a
Yeah.
microphone or something. But yeah,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
definitely it's an edge for me for sure to bring more technology in. I think
Yeah.
in my mind I was actually probably around well, yeah, 2 years ago. I did a ton of touring in 2019, and I had a band with me, and I was kind of leaning towards just more band and less tracks. And
Cool.
and then I don't know. So there's like with everyone, there's been like profound inner and outer shifts this last year and a half, and I think I've just come to a place of really, I still want to do the band thing, but really appreciating simplicity and really appreciating being able to do a bigger sound by myself if I want to, or have a guest here and there, but just, yeah, just having the option for simplicity feels nice.
Yeah.
Although more technology doesn't necessarily mean simplicity.
Yeah, but I feel you. Like there's a balance between the excitement of having other players in a band, which is amazing, but it's the levels and magnitudes of cost and work involved
Yeah,
is huge
yeah,
compared to like if you can pull it off alone. I mean, it needs to satisfy you artistically to do it alone,
totally.
but if it
Hmm.
does, it's like, man, it opens up so many opportunities, some gigs you couldn't have done before.
Yeah,
And you think about like one cool thing is like if you make this setup, which I assume you will, there's the flexibility to like in looping, like, well, I want to add a loop or actually, oh, this sounds cool. I'm going to change this. You don't really have to communicate anything to anybody else. You can really take it
yeah,
places and not worry about, oh, we rehearsed this or that. Are they going to follow this change?
totally. Yeah, yeah. It's nice to just get to, yeah, just like go with where the moment is calling and just see. I've definitely had that feeling of like, okay, we need to rehearse. We need to all know what's going on. Even if there is a moment of improvisation, it's planned where it is, And so, um, yeah, that's definitely, I'm excited to, mostly right now, I'm just really excited to get comfortable on this new system, because then
Oh, I
it'll
feel
allow
you.
me to do
Yeah.
all that stuff.
I just changed
Yeah.
this keyboard over here, and it's basically just a newer version, and it's taken me months just to
Yeah.
like feel like ready to go, and I'm still kind of like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Everything's in a different place, and
I
like it's
know.
got different sounds, and I have to learn all this stuff and get
They're all
fluent with it.
instruments. It's like learning a whole new, yeah, whole new instrument each time.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
cool.
Well, cool. So tell me a little bit about like your creative process in general. Are you someone who likes to work from a place of improvisation and making the loops to as a way of writing, or what serves as the genesis point, or more pointedly, walk us through like what the creative life is like for you, because it's interesting to know for some people. Some people are like, comes when it comes, and I just wait. Or some people are like, no, 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 no. I gotta like chop that wood at least a little bit every day. Otherwise, yeah, I'm a mess.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it is different all the time and changing all the time, but it's kind of it's such a part of me to write songs that it happens often. I would say a few times a week there's something being created. Generally it's not on the loop pedal, although this new setup is probably going to change all sorts of things. um, but usually it just, I think as a singer it usually just comes in my mind and through my voice, and then I kind of am like, okay, which instrument should I go to based on what I'm hearing in my head. um, I also just love writing words, so I give a lot of time to that too, just to play with words and to push my own edges with finding new ways of saying things and trying to get at the essence of
Do you do
what.
that first or in
Mm,
the process of creating the music?
it's in the process. Sometimes words will come through and I'll just write them, but generally it's melody, I would say. The melody,
Yeah,
sometimes words land with the melody, but generally there's some kind of melody. I'm very melody
me too.
at the
Yeah.
forefront. Yeah, I hear that in your music. I think that's what I
Not
would.
a lot of words, yeah.
Yeah, but
But
like
as you
really
can tell, but
those beautiful, like the kind of melodies that you're like, oh, that's so good. I love that. So I, yeah, I usually start there. And then, which instrument I choose, playing around with different rhythms and tempos and like that all will change the words immediately. So a lot of it's like just playing with different ideas, and I try to be really. It's like on the one hand, I have a relationship with songwriting that feels a lot. It's like listening, like just getting really receptive for whatever I'm sensing, or I have this like feeling of like there's these muses and they're trying to give me something, and I'm just like, okay, I just got to get open and just like be ready. But then it's also a conversation. It's like then as I start engaging in the process, there's like it's more of a an exploration, and the more I guess the more curious and kind of playful I can get. Playful is almost not the right word because some songs I'm coming from a place of maybe sorrow or something where it's not so light, um, but that kind of curious spirit that is wondering how does this want to be. Um, the main way that I stop up my channel uh,
too
is
much
if I
bread.
yeah, if
No.
I just start like, oh, this needs to be something. This needs to like sound good, or I'm writing a song right now for people. Like even that thought can get messy.
Oh god.
So
Yeah, if anyone's like, "I gotta write something catchy or a hit," it's the kiss of death. I
yeah,
mean, yeah, that's always a tough thing. I had something like that happen to me recently where I had to write something for someone to do something with, and it was someone I was a real fan of, and I was just like, "Man, don't think about it. Don't think about it. Just
yeah,
just make sound, make noise like you
yeah,
always do, and
yeah,
don't worry about it."
totally.
For someone who, we kind of alluded to this at the beginning of the conversation, this community that we're in musically, and it has, I suppose, a spiritual edge to it, an environmental edge. Some would call it a consci edge, consciousness edge, psychedelic edge, whatever it is. But being immersed in that scene for this long, um, I'm curious, like what you kind of feel like, what that experience has been like for you as a woman
Hmm.
moving through that, and sort of the unique perspective that might bring, and some of the blind spots maybe in this scene, like how it's different for women in the scene.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I appreciate the question. I feel like I think in some ways it's maybe um, less. There can often be more consciousness. The industry still, even in the conscious music scene, is still like of the festivals and um, the stages or stage hands or the sound guy. Like oftentimes they're men, but in that, I think in the conscious scene there can be more consciousness. Um, and so comparatively, I think it can be, um, yeah, there can just be, I feel sometimes more attention to maybe respect or just like being treated
That's
the
good.
same way.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, and, I've experienced for sure like lots of moments where, the sound guy, you know, assumes I don't know anything about tech or, talks to David instead of me as we're setting up for Wildlight, or these subtle things. It's never been anything like super huge, but like on that end as a musician, I feel like I just, I noticed that and I know that we're still balancing a lot in all these realms and figuring it out. But I appreciate the attention. I appreciate that you even asked that question. It's like it's on the consciousness of like how to bring balance to something that's, maybe there's been a lot of imbalance accumulated over eons, and so how can we bring
Yeah.
awareness
I
to
mean,
it? Yeah,
on one level, it's an industry that is easier for a man to be a part of, or those who identify as men, because um, just on the level of like dressing rooms or bathrooms or what you need to even, I don't know, it's like it's kind of set up for men, let alone like if you want to have a family or raise children. Historically, men are the one who kind of take off,
yeah,
and then you get into a touring world, and it's like it's not as easy.
yeah,
Um, and it's sort of like like you said, there's a structure set up where it's kind of accepted that, like, yeah, well, I guess so and so is going to take off for a while because that's the job, and
yeah,
so.
yeah. And that's an interesting inquiry too of like, what if we have a child? Like what
Hmm.
it's like, what would that look like? And that's been an interesting contemplation because I've noticed as a woman that there's a very strong idea in me that's, put that I just have received from watching my, mother or friends or whatever, the world, that like if I have a child, it means I'm like not going to tour anymore, or like that, something will drastically shift. And but then I'm seeing models that are like showing me that that's totally not true. Um, so that's helpful too. I think there is a pretty big difference in that realm for women versus men. So, yeah.
Well, is that a concern of yours? Like, sort of like what's your miracle future for yourself
Did you
and
say
your work?
miracle future?
Yeah, yeah. What's the
Cool.
miracle future?
Gosh. Um, my miracle future. Um, I I feel that I'm oriented towards, um, I guess for me, my, how do you even
Here
answer
it
that?
comes. I can feel it.
Well,
Yeah.
it's like I want more and more to orient towards being available for what wants to come through, whatever that is. And so I don't really have a strong feeling of like I want this outcome or I want that outcome, because really the outcome I want, or the life that I want, is to just get clearer and clearer and more aware and more present, and that everything else will flow from that, will happen. And if that means I'm meant to be a mother, that's what that message will come through, or a child will come through. And if not, then I'm totally here for the other, like whatever else, and like the songs forever, the creations forever, and to just be clearer and clearer so that what comes through is clearer and clearer, um, in service to this planet, really in service to life. And that has become, it's just getting, it was always clear, but it was kind of like in my head, and it's moving into my whole body and heart now, of like
Mm.
actually no, like uh yeah, the ego trips, they're just distracting, they're just so distracting. And it's hard to be in a path as a woman, especially, but in general, just a path of music where there's a lot of projection. There's a lot of like, we live in a culture that really idolizes fame in this interesting way. And it really is, I've come to a point of being like, wow, what a journey to be on, constantly interacting with that side that wants to get inflated by people's adoration, or like by something. And it's like constantly asking me to get more real and dismantle whole parts of my idea of who I am, and or who I should be. So that's
It's
that's my
beautiful.
miracle future, I guess.
Did that
Present.
did that become more revealed in this last year and a half of the
Yeah,
COVIDian era?
the COVIDian
Or
era has revealed much. Yeah, for sure. It's definitely. I mean, completely stopped touring. We started growing a lot more food, slowed way down. I've taken huge, what started as a social media fast for 2 weeks turned into a 6 or 8 week long break, and then has totally recalibrated. Like, I've put it on a different phone. Like, I don't even touch it a lot. Like, doing a week without social media is now normal for me at random times. And it's just like none of that stuff is as important. And it used to be such a pull, like all of the keeping up with things, and this is what other people are doing, I should do this too. Like,
yeah.
it's just not, it's so much more important to be clear. It's so much more important because, and there's an urgency that I feel that doesn't make me afraid, but it makes me um, focused on what's important. With just witnessing what's going on with the planet, it just is like all the more important to be more clear and more available. Um, so yeah,
So
this last year has really helped a lot with that.
you've used that word clear a few times. Like, let me help define it by asking you, what's the dirt in the water? What's the opposing polarity of that?
Oh, um, thoughts of the separate self. Yeah, um, all the thoughts of, yeah, all the thoughts of separateness. I guess it's really what it comes down to.
The
Um,
isolated sense of self, the things about like the me world. It's like, well, that's all there is. Protecting.
yeah,
Uh, mm-hmm.
and I think too the thoughts of like, uh, I'm right, you're wrong, you're other, like that. Even the ideas of other, like this um yeah, it's like a process of dismantling or letting dissolve those thoughts into a greater awareness of like everything is connected at all times. I'm not actually separate. So what happens when I move from that awareness? Then a lot of things that I used to be really concerned about with myself become really unimportant, really irrelevant. And and then what is important becomes like a center and a clarity. It emerges out of the uh, I guess presence. Just yeah, presence kind of just allows those things to hold less sway.
I'll often be telling Rada, my partner, about like some bullshit going on and like all the details. And then at the end, it'll kind of hit me. I'm like, but none of it matters.
Yeah,
Like, I mean,
yeah,
really, then we die.
yeah.
So,
Sometimes you just got to air that stuff out and let it move, and that's really helpful. It's helpful to let stuff move, I think. uh, as long as yeah, it's like the attachment is where we get caught, literally. Yeah.
so aside from changing that social media practice, which sounds great, what other things came up in this last time period as things cleared away and broke down? What has changed in your process, in particular about your relationship to being a musician by trade, a creator?
Mm,
Like, are you planning on touring less, or
yeah,
like,
so
is there a
that
part of you that's like, I don't want to do certain things the same way?
exactly. I think that's been a really big one, is feeling like I don't want to tour as much as I was touring. It was I 2019 was definitely my biggest touring year I've ever had, and it was there was a lot of growth and it was great. And I was exhausted by the end. And I really didn't feel connected to my songwriting. I didn't have time to record. You know, it was just really full on. And um, I'm definitely in a lot of reassessment of that. Um, I do notice that I'm very happy to be just focused on creating right now. I'm in no hurry to tour. I know I will tour again, but I think I want it to be just a lot more intentional and less often. And that feels sustainable to my body and it feels sustainable to the earth more too. So it just feels right. Yeah. But I'll see what unfolds. I do love singing to people live in the moment too, even though I'm kind of
I
a
know.
hermit.
There's a balance. I
Yeah.
know there is a balance because you're like, this feels great, just not going places. But then also there's
Totally.
another part of you that wants to be fed too, and
Yeah.
that sense of that reciprocal energy of putting something out and then it's coming back and then you're giving back and then it's coming back is
Yeah.
special.
Totally. Yeah. It's really special. It's a very unique thing. And so, yeah, I think also the how I do it is being reassessed now too, of like, how could it, what are the ways that it could just feel a lot less, like less pieces to manage, simpler.
Totally.
Yeah.
Honestly, isn't that kind of the main $1 million question? Is it's less the what you're doing and the how you do it at
Yeah.
the end of the day?
Totally.
Because you could have, even if you had all sorts of things going on, it's going well. But what if it's just like you're an asshole, or you hate it, or you're stressed, or
Yeah.
what's the point?
Yeah.
You know,
It's like
um,
with everything. Like I think about that all the time with what I, with words, just even having a conversation. It's like not what you say, it's how, or it's not what you're doing, it's how. It's not what you're thinking, it's how. It's just like all of the,
how you're thinking. Wow, I
yeah,
like that.
yeah, yeah.
How you're thinking. That's amazing. Someone said something the other day on a podcast. I misheard them, but I thought they said the many doorways to death,
Ooh,
and they said the many doorways to depth. It was Erica's Zelfin. Sorry, I'm so embarrassed that I'm getting. I got anyway. Why I'm saying that, but I
but you
love
were
it
like, that's
sometimes.
the song title.
Yeah, and I'm like anything that's like sort of like a koan where you're like, what does that mean? That's amazing. That's
Yeah,
like such a cool way of putting it. Erica Zelfin. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Doctor Erica.
nice.
But so I love that idea of like how we think.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I'm
Mm.
actually in a process of totally tripping out on that right now in my life. Just uh, doing deeper layers of inquiry, of self inquiry, and noticing it's that I think I've been operating on the what I'm thinking for a very long time, and now it's like the how, and
Mm.
actually uh, being in the practice of us like letting go of all my own beliefs about myself or life, and just like being curious about like what is, who am I, what is, anyway. I don't even know. I don't know how to explain it.
Sounds psychedelic.
Always.
So tell me a bit about like the parts that kind of brought you together musically. The voice is a big part of how you create, and you say that's kind of the main factor of what you're sort of supporting and putting out there. It sounds like, and
Mm-hmm.
words are a way of transmuting those.
Mm-hmm.
Um, how did have you always been a singer, or were there particular artists that you're like really inspired you, or a particular show you saw and you're like, wow, I want to do something like that?
Yeah, yeah. Bob Dylan got me really, really into writing words for songs. Prior to that, I wrote a lot, but I had never really written in a song format. And something about, I just in college, my senior year of college, I got first junior, I got really deep into Bob Dylan and also Neutral Milk Hotel, who not many people know, but
Yeah, totally.
they
Yeah.
yeah, his songwriting, the way that he collages words and creates these like kind of abstract images with language, I just he actually, Jeff Mangum, is that his name? Of Nutrimoc
I
Hotel?
believe so.
I believe so.
I'm not a super fan, but I've listened to it. I like it.
Yeah, I think those songs actually got me playing guitar, and then guitar ended up being sort of a opening into songwriting
Right.
because he's, I don't know, something about that instrument. It just started songs coming through. And so,
Well, chord based usually, which is
yeah,
a good way to
yeah,
write songs.
totally. And I think I'm realizing in recent, like the last year or two, really coming to realization that I'm very influenced by rhythm. And so with guitar, there's often, it's pretty hard not to have a, I mean, you can kind of strum without rhythm, but I was learning a lot of finger picking, which has a very kind of like, can have quite a rhythm, a percussive kind of feeling. And so I think that
Yeah.
was also calling out a lot of stuff. And then the loop pedal just changed everything. So then it was like this whole other realm of,
Technology.
yeah,
Technology.
yeah.
Yeah. I'm a product of technology in the sense that, like, I didn't start recording and making music until 2001, which is like right at that marker when you could buy an M box and have an iMac and
Uh-huh.
essentially record yourself and
Right.
make albums. And
So
there's no
cool.
way I would be experimenting with all this stuff in a studio. It never would have developed,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. I
So
mean,
a
it's
digital baby.
totally, it's amazing how accessible it all is. Just right. My first album, I just sung into the computer. I didn't have a mic or anything.
Sounds awesome.
Yeah.
What
Very
this is a
lo-fi.
random question, but I kind of there's a couple things I like in life. I like hats, I like coats, I like vocal mics,
Uh-huh.
and I have way too many of them.
Nice.
What do you like to use on stage for, or what have you come across that you're into?
I'm not a vocal mic aficionado. I'm getting schooled by the various producers that I'm working with,
But on
but on
stage,
stage I
are you
use
like
the
whatever,
I use
anything?
the Beta 58. I have a Beta 58.
Yeah,
And part of that is actually because of wild light, and I've just gotten used to using it for my live setup too.
it's solid.
It
That's
is
solid.
solid, yeah,
Yeah,
and I like it. And the reason we used it is it's got a lot of high end, and it would cut a little better through for
yeah,
the tracks. Um,
yeah.
but then I recently invested in a wireless Beta 58, which is extra one because I realized, wow, if I'm
Oh,
not
cool.
tied to something, I can like dance everywhere. So that's fun.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, randomly there's this mic maybe be good for you called the MD80, the
Okay.
Telefunken. It has this nice,
Oh,
beautiful high and a little scoop, and I think for
I'm gonna write
female
that down.
vocals, yeah, I don't know if it's wireless, but they might have a wireless version. And it comes in all sorts of cool colors and stuff. I got one that was wood, that was kind of beautiful.
Oh, cool. That's
Has a
awesome.
nice weight to it,
I
but
feel
it's
like
not
I've
super
been
expensive.
recommended to that one before.
If you like the
MDE.
high end, that one's got a nice one.
Yeah, well, what I'm coming to realize, I've been toying with a few mics with recent recording sessions, and of other people that like different producers' mics, and I think I actually sound better on a warm mic.
Yeah.
It's just a different quality, so I like that for recording, but we'll see. Everything's changing.
Yeah. I feel like every year I'm always like, "Oh, I wanna try this other one," and then,
Yeah.
so whatever your latest one's sort of the favorite, and the one I have
Mm.
now, I'm really enjoying, but,
What's your stage mic?
I sing like a girl, so that's why I thought it'd be relevant to you.
Oh, cool.
It's, um, it's the Sennheiser MD431, I believe,
Okay.
or yeah, and I had the, vintage version. And I got that because it was like back in the day, it was like Prince, Whitney Houston, Stevie Wonder. They're all using this mic, and I was like, I want to get one of the old ones. It sounds
Yeah.
cool, and it's cool. The old one's cool, but they remade it, and I saw, Owen Pallett. You ever heard of him? He's
No.
amazing. You should talk about looping. I
Okay.
mean, the
Oh,
the greatest
I'll
loop I've
write
ever
him
seen
down too.
ever, and he's in Arcade Fire, but he has his own thing that's truly truly incredible live artist, and that's what he sings through, and he's all about it, so it was on my radar,
That's cool. That's awesome.
and some other people use it, and then I tried it, and I was like, "Oh, yeah, it's kinda like it's very, very smooth, and it sits back a bit, but it's nice for what I'm doing, and so
Yeah,
it's really easy to sing into."
That's cool. Yeah, I think for live, I tend to need something that can kind of sit on top a bit more because of
Yeah.
the nature of not knowing how it's going to sound in a room. And if I like, I think because I do pay a lot of attention to words, I like my lyrics to be at least somewhat audible in the live setting.
You want people to hear your words? Oh, okay.
I know it's
Yeah.
really radical. I don't know if anyone's
Um,
listening, but no, I'm just kidding.
yeah. But like, it goes the other direction too. Like Bjork, I heard her say that she's like, whatever, and she
Yeah,
uses 58 on stage. So does
yeah,
Bono, and so do a lot
yeah,
of people. But
yeah,
then, so really it's like whatever works for you, it
yeah,
works.
totally.
And have you ever found that when you're doing the vocal processing live, that if you have that going straight into your system, you get some feedback issues sometimes with like big front of house systems? Or have
um,
it's been okay for you?
you mean like in monitors, or I usually use in
Oh,
ears?
just
So,
well, sometimes like, like when the effects are coming from you versus the front of
oh,
house,
yeah,
and if it's overdone, it's causes some problems because they can't be adjusted by anybody. You're just up
right.
there in those boxes, those looper
You
boxes
know,
sometimes.
I think honestly, the reason I haven't is because I've pretty much gone to in ears. And so there's just not
Mhm.
as much sound happening on the stage. Cause basically I
Yeah.
just tell them like turn off the like
Yeah. Yeah, me
I
too.
have unless I'm with a band, in which case I guess yeah, there is monitors happening usually, but it definitely simplifies things. It's
Right.
hard though. I mean, it's like for every one show that you feel really great about the sound, there's like four that you're like, God, was that any good? Like, and everyone's like, that was awesome. And you're like, I couldn't hear myself.
I
So
know. It's kinda
it's tricky.
everything is how you hear the sound on stage, and, yeah, I've had so many. If you're not, I don't know if you tour with a sound person. I don't. I would look forward to that in the near future, I hope, but I've had all sorts of crazy situations where, like, you do the sound check, and then later on, you start the show, and you're like, "Okay," you're up there kind of judging what you're hearing based, you know what I mean? You can kinda
Yeah.
feel it in the room, the bass and stuff, and as my set went on, it felt like it was just getting quieter and quieter, like, it almost like air was going out of a balloon. It's like, and I kept turning it up and up, and it go down and down and up and up, and afterwards, I said, "Man, what was going on?" It just felt like it got quiet. It felt like I was playing through this. He's like, "Oh, it was just these people, it was too loud for them, so I just kept bringing it down." I was like,
Oh
"I
my
can't
God.
control it." I was like, "We didn't discuss this." Like,
Yeah, totally. He's got like,
it's like there was no bass anymore, and there was no, and I would hit
yeah,
something, and I'm like, it's supposed to do something, but now it's not. It's not what we planned.
yeah,
He just changed his mind.
totally. I know. Like a little communication would be nice.
It's frustrating. I don't know about you, but you get in
Those are
these
the parts I
openings.
don't miss about touring.
Yeah. Or, if you're in an opening slot and you show up and they're like, "Oh, you're the opener," and they get high, and then they're like, "Okay, let's start the sound check." And I'm just like, "You guys are not at all paying attention to any of this. Like, there's gonna
Yeah.
be a lot of people here. Like, do up."
I had one of those on the last tour. Uh, that for sure I was like, man, everyone's really high. Like
Yeah.
they do not know what was going on. Luckily, my brother was on tour with me, and he's a sound guy, even though that wasn't his job on that tour.
Thank God.
He was like,
Pinch hitter.
yeah, and it was a little tense because it was kind of like he was losing his temper at a certain point, not overly, but just like getting legitimately frustrated at like, there's like, it's really simple what we're asking you to do here.
Right.
So yeah,
Right,
that
right.
happens.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I've had situations where, like, anytime something's wrong, immediately, like, "Well, it's your system. There's something
yeah,
wrong." And I'm like,
yeah.
"Why don't we just check, this cable?" And it's 9 times out of 10, it's like a bad XLR cable
Yeah,
from the house or something like
so
that.
funny. Hey, quick question. Am I being like is my voice being recorded?
Of course, it's a
Okay.
podcast.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just cuz I can
I've
see these
never
little lines on the
Oh,
bottom and I
I was gonna
can't
say, I've
tell.
never had someone ask
By
me if they're being recorded. I'm like,
the
"This is
way,
definitely being recorded."
so, wait, are you going to share this with
Actually,
anyone?
that happened once. That happened once. Krishna Das didn't know that I was recording a podcast, and after the fact, he's like, "I didn't know that was a podcast." And I was like, "Yeah."
That's awesome.
and we had to like fix some things. But I was like,
Cool.
I'm sorry. So yeah, maybe I should be really clear about that. It's like
No,
we're
I meant like
entering podcast
logistically.
land.
I'm seeing these little like sound wave lines and I don't see them for when I'm talking. And so I just want to make
Oh,
sure.
well, it's funny. I see him for you, but I don't see him for me.
Great.
But
Perfect. I only see them for you.
yeah, I'm recording. I record myself as well on my own system here.
Okay. Perfect.
So
Okay.
hopefully we'll be okay.
Great.
Well, let's as we're rounding the corner here. Maybe you could talk to us a bit about like, well, it could go a few different directions. I mean, I'm curious what you're kind of hopeful for in general, or if you're hopeful, and what it is that you're hopeful for, whether it's personal or professional or beyond that. But let's start there before I take it to the next step.
I'm a very hopeful person, but it it's like it's not a blind hope. It's like I don't know, maybe I use that word differently. It's kind of like belief in possibility. And that's how I'm just oriented because I feel that we we are that our thoughts are very powerful and we're creating with those thoughts and in this kind of metaphysical reality of existence. And so for me, hope is that staying open to possibility and believing that something really powerful and beautiful is possible, knowing that it is more possible by me believing in it. And so I orient myself towards that, um, for myself and for the collective and for the planet. And I feel like I'm more useful when I orient that way. I've found that when I don't when I get into like a tailspin about humanity or my life or something, that it's just not very useful. It's not helpful. It doesn't help anything. It usually just creates more of the same energy. So I tend to want to be helpful and to move to do my little part in this grand puzzle of existence that we're all made of to live into what's possible. And so part of that is in my mind with how I orient, I guess, how I think.
It's kind of crazy because it sounds like I fed you that answer only because like my album's called Possible right now. We have a little
Oh,
campaign going called What's Possible. That's the hashtag. And it's like, so I vibe that totally. It's
nice.
about choosing it a bit and dreaming it, and
Catch East
uh,
Forest's new album coming out soon.
yeah, right. Oh my God. That's really
But I really
beautiful.
believe all that. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, we did not talk
But I'm
about that
also
before.
dismantling my own beliefs, so I don't know. I have no idea.
Yeah, it's all metaphor anyway, right?
Felt.
Right? Like,
Right.
yeah.
We're all just experiencing, I guess.
Well, what do you have going on right now? If we do want to just let people know about what you have and where they can find you.
Yeah. Um, right now there's a lot of new music happening and I'm excited actually, even though I know it's kind of where the industry is going due to Spotify and stuff. But I'm releasing more singles. I used to just strictly do albums, and the recent single that was just released, "Breath I Breathe," is kind of one of the first singles that I've released. I've done some that are kind of like pre-album releases, but now I'm more just doing like songs that are just given as themselves with no real discussion of the album to come, even though there will be an album.
Right.
Um, and I actually like this model right now because I've put a lot of care and just a lot goes into each song. And so to give it by itself feels really nice. Because oftentimes I have the feeling of like working for like 2 or even sometimes 3 years on an album. And then it's like all these songs and I've worked so hard on every song and the whole thing just goes out at once and all these songs kind of like slip through the cracks, it feels like. I'm doing more of that and I'm excited because I'm going to be releasing a lot of singles coming up and um, yeah, and everything. There's new videos. I have an online course that is for helping anyone who wants support with opening their um, creative listening, their voice, their songwriting, like just being more available that way. It's called The Living Song. So everything's on my website, which I'm sure you can
But let's
share
say it.
whatever.
It
Oh,
is.
it's my name, aylanereo.com.
Cool. Yeah, and we'll put that in the show notes
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well,
What are you
it's
working on? What's coming
what am
up for
I
you?
what am I working on? Well, I just released that Possible album, and
Oh, it's just released. It's out
yeah, a
now.
couple weeks ago, and we also released it like a song at a time too,
Awesome.
so it wasn't just one day. It went over several months, and
Oh, I'm so excited to dive into that.
yeah,
Yay.
it's cool. It's definitely my pandemic-y thing, I guess.
Yeah.
Two albums came out of the pandemic, but they're very different. There's that one and then another one coming up soon. But that's going on, and then I do this podcast. I do some retreats that have been delayed, and so the first one is coming back after 2 years soon. So
Cool.
that's on my mind, making me a little nervous because it's been a while, but
Yeah.
and it's a whole new world.
Yeah.
But just and that's like you, just thinking about how to get back into touring, and I'm sure you felt in the last month or 6 weeks or so, like sort of this tidal wave of the world being like, all right, let's plan this for 2022. And what about this? What about this? And
Totally.
I'm just like, I don't know. I don't
Yeah.
know. And then here we are, like stumbling where now everything's starting to be like, well, I don't know if that can happen anymore in a month or
Yeah.
two. And
Actually,
so, yeah,
we
so
got a little
it's,
ahead of ourselves.
yeah, it's a
Yeah.
little frustrating, but it's also just like, I don't know. I'm
Yeah.
just trying to roll with it. And I've also been pretty creatively active over the time, and that feels good. So it's the business stuff that's probably been the most stressful, and I need to just
Yeah.
keep that attitude of remembering that we all die. And
Yeah. Life's short. If not now, when? That's been my mantra lately. If not now, when? Because we're going to die.
there you
In a
go.
good way, in a
Yeah.
happy way.
That'll be the title of this podcast. It'll be Ayla Nereo, We All Die.
We all
Um,
die, but in a nice, happy way.
yeah, there you go. Well, thank you so much for taking the time. It was wonderful to chat, and look forward to doing it another time.
Yeah, thank you so much. This is lovely. Look forward to it.